Well, thanks for a wonderful lecture. So I just wanted to connect this body of work with, the historical work that you cited at the start by Katz and Lazarsfeld and others, which is sort of seminal work on how social communication is structured. And so sort of two, one can talk for a long time on these things, but let me sort of try and, so one of the things we take away from that work is, this two-way flow of influence idea, that when things are happening in the world out there, newspapers, radio, television, most people still talk to a few opinion leaders in these communities. And so this is the law of the few sort of idea. The other, which seems to be coming up also in your, in your work, there are these influentials, and it's a very small fraction of people, and they have a good idea who these people are. So that resonates with this earlier work. The other finding that you have, which I didn't fully catch on really, is this question about how you would identify these people. Can you identify them based on demographic, characteristics? Now, the earlier literature, as far as I can recall, seemed to suggest, and there's been a lot of work in marketing after that, seems to suggest that it's actually quite hard to find out who these people are, in terms of age or gender or income, education. So what did you find with respect to that? Is the Indian context very different from upstate New York?
No, so I guess, if we want to predict diffusion centrality, it does correlate with age and wealth and a whole series of things. But here we're looking, so, part of the, people know the Katz and Lazarsfeld work, and in general, the sort of, part of what happens is when I want to talk to somebody to get information, say, maybe I want to learn about a new computer program, it makes sense for me to talk to other people who are somewhat in a very similar context that I am. So I don't necessarily want to look too far up the ladder or too far down in order to get information. I might want to be talking to someone who's in similar circumstances. And so there might be people who are concentrated, but they are also stratified to some extent. And here, when we're looking for people that are overall diffusion central, it's not necessarily this kind of information can diffuse widely across groups and so forth. So it's a little different than trying to form an opinion about whether I want to vote for Truman and Dewey, as in their original study. But instead, here I'm just trying to spread news about certain organizations. So I think it has a little different feel to it. But I think what you're pointing to is that there's a richness in how these processes work, which is important to understand. And who's good for diffusing different kinds of information might be very different. And that's not something that we address here. This is just sort of, saying, okay, this is one problem, here's an approach to it, and we can mix theory and empirics, and the theory informs our empirical observations. Yeah. Questions?
Everybody?
Yeah.
Thanks very much.